Have you ever looked at someone you love, someone who always seems calm, composed, and a little distant, and wondered what's really happening beneath that surface? Most people assume avoidant individuals don't feel deeply, that they're simply cold or detached. But here's the secret. Avoidants carry entire worlds inside of them, worlds they rarely let anyone enter. And in today's video, I want to take you behind the curtain of their psychology. This isn't about judgment or labeling. It's about understanding. Because the moment you understand what's truly happening in the avoidant mind, you stop taking their distance so personally, and you begin to see the hidden language of their love, their fears, and their regrets. Stay with me until the end, because I promise, each of these 5 secrets will not only surprise you, but may completely change the way you see your relationships. So, let's begin with the very first secret. Secret number 1. Avoidants don't hate intimacy. They fear losing themselves inside of it. This is one of the biggest misconceptions about avoidant people. From the outside, it looks like they reject closeness. They cancel plans. They hesitate to commit. They sometimes even shut down conversations right when things get personal. And naturally, the people around them think they just don't want intimacy. But the truth is much more complex. Avoidants don't actually despise intimacy. Deep down, they long for it, just like anyone else. They want to be seen, to be understood, to feel safe in someone's arms. The difference is, to them, intimacy feels like a risk of losing themselves. Imagine growing up in an environment where emotional needs were met with criticism, withdrawal, or even punishment. Many avoidants learned very early that needing too much made them feel unworthy or unsafe. So they developed a survival strategy. If I keep myself self-sufficient, if I never rely too much on anyone, I won't get hurt. Over time, this protective wall hardens. By adulthood, intimacy no longer feels safe. It feels like danger. When a partner gets close, instead of warmth, their nervous system sends alarms. Careful. Don't lose yourself. Don't depend on them too much. Protect your freedom. Here's a story to illustrate. Sarah was dating an avoidant man named Daniel. At first, Daniel was charming, attentive, and even romantic. But as soon as Sarah began to talk about moving in together, Daniel started to withdraw. He delayed conversations, avoided making plans, and even began working longer hours just to create space. Sarah felt confused and rejected, thinking Daniel didn't love her enough. But in reality, Daniel did love her. He was simply overwhelmed by the idea that closeness meant giving up his sense of self. He wasn't running from Sarah. He was running from the old childhood fear of being engulfed. The lesson here is powerful. Avoidants aren't allergic to love. They're allergic to the loss of autonomy they fear intimacy will bring. And when you recognize this, you stop interpreting their distance as rejection and begin to see it as a form of protection. Secret number 2. Avoidants feel more than they show, and sometimes more than they can handle. One of the strangest paradoxes about avoidant people is this. The more distant they seem on the outside, the more intense their emotions often are on the inside. Most people assume avoidants are cold, unfeeling, or disconnected. But that's far from the truth. Avoidants actually feel a lot. They just don't show it in the ways you'd expect. Think about it like this. Imagine someone carrying a heavy backpack filled with emotions. Fear, longing, guilt, even love. But instead of unpacking it piece by piece with someone they trust, they just keep it zipped up, pressing it tightly against their back, pretending it isn't heavy. That's the avoidant way. They've learned that sharing emotions makes them vulnerable, so they suppress them instead. But suppression doesn't erase feelings. It only pushes them deeper until they become overwhelming. Here's a story to bring this to life. Mark, a dismissive avoidant man, dated Emily for 2 years. On the surface, he seemed calm, detached, and rarely expressed how much he cared. Emily often said, "I don't even know if you love me." But when they broke up, Mark struggled in silence. He replayed memories, stalked her social media, and even wrote long messages he never sent. Outwardly, he looked unaffected, going to work, hanging out with friends, but internally, he was drowning in emotions he didn't know how to share. To Emily, it looked like he moved on instantly. In reality, Mark was carrying grief alone because expressing it felt too unsafe. This is the hidden pain of avoidance. They don't lack emotions, they lack safe pathways to express them. Their calm exterior is often just a mask for deep feelings they can't show. And here's the twist: because they suppress so much, when those emotions finally do surface, they often come out sideways, through sudden withdrawal, passive-aggressive comments, or even explosive arguments. So, what's the lesson here? If you're in a relationship with an avoidant, don't assume their silence means emptiness. Sometimes, silence is the loudest sign of how much they're holding inside. The more you understand this, the less you take their blank face at face value. Secret number 3. Avoidants crave closeness, but fear losing themselves in it. This is perhaps the most important secret of all. Avoidants don't actually dislike love or intimacy. Deep down, they want it just as much as anyone else. They long for connection, for someone to see them, to feel safe in love. But here's the paradox. They fear that closeness will come at the cost of their independence. Picture it like standing on the edge of a beautiful ocean. Part of them wants to dive in, to swim freely and feel the warmth of connection. But another part imagines drowning, losing control, being swept away by waves they can't handle. So instead, they stay on the shore, watching from a distance, wanting but not daring. Let me give you an example. Sarah, a fearful, avoidant woman, once described her love life like this: "I want to be held, but the moment someone tries to hold me too tightly, I panic. It feels like I'm disappearing." She would push her boyfriend away right after the most intimate moments, not because she didn't love him, but because her nervous system confused closeness with danger. For Sarah, intimacy wasn't just about love. It triggered a fear of losing herself, of being swallowed whole. This is the hidden dance of avoidance. They move toward you because they care, then retreat because they're scared. It's not a game, and it's not manipulation. It's a survival strategy rooted in early experiences where closeness felt unsafe. For some, it came from childhood where their needs weren't consistently met. For others, it came from relationships where love was conditional. Whatever the origin, the pattern repeats. Approach, then withdraw. So if you've ever been left confused by an avoidant partner who seems loving one moment and distant the next, remember this. It's not that they don't want you. It's that they're fighting an inner battle between love and fear. They're trying to hold on to you without losing themselves. And here's the powerful lesson. Avoidants don't need you to chase them, fix them, or prove your worth. What they need most is the reassurance that they can be close without disappearing. When you give them both space and presence, without pressure, you give them the chance to step closer on their own terms. Secret number 4. Avoidants apologize differently, and often without words. One of the biggest frustrations people have with avoidance is this: they don't always say, "I'm sorry." You wait for the text, the heartfelt message, the tearful confession, but it rarely comes in the way you imagine. Instead, avoidants show their remorse in subtle, indirect ways, and if you don't know this secret, you might miss it entirely. Let me share a story. James had been dating a dismissive, avoidant woman for almost a year. After a fight where he accused her of shutting down emotionally, she disappeared for 2 weeks. No calls, no messages, nothing. James thought it was over, but one day, she showed up at his apartment with his favorite coffee order. No explanation, no apology, just quiet presence. To James, it felt frustrating. To her, that was her apology. She wasn't good with words, but she knew what mattered to him, and offered it in the only way she felt safe. This is how many avoidants operate. They may fix something broken around the house. They may reach out with a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" after weeks of silence. They may suddenly show interest in your life again, not to manipulate, but as their way of saying, "I still care and I know I hurt you." It's not the grand gesture of a romance movies. It's small, it's quiet, it's understated. But for an avoidant, it's huge, because it means they've confronted the shame they usually run from. Remember, avoidants fear feeling defective, unworthy, or like a burden. Saying, "I'm sorry," forces them to face that fear head on. So instead, they let their actions whisper the apology their words can't yet carry. Now here's the lesson. If you demand a specific kind of apology, you might miss the one they're already giving. Healing with an avoidant means listening not just to words, but to intention. That doesn't mean you accept crumbs or tolerate disrespect. It means recognizing when effort, however awkward, comes from a genuine place. And here's the paradox. When you stop chasing the perfect apology, when you allow silence and dignity to hold space, that's when avoidants are most likely to give you a real one. Not forced, not defensive, but from the heart. It may not sound like, "I'm sorry." It may sound like, "I've been thinking about what happened." Or, "I know I wasn't there for you the way I should have been." But in their world, that's not just an apology. That's a breakthrough. Secret number 5. Avoidants feel more than they show, and sometimes more than they can handle. If you think avoidants are cold, detached, or incapable of love, here's the truth. They often feel everything more intensely than they let on. Their silence, their distance, their calm exterior. It's not the absence of emotion. It's the armor they've built to survive overwhelming feelings. Think of it this way. When you feel hurt, you might cry, shout, or pour your heart out. But when an avoidant feels hurt, their system goes into lockdown. They freeze, they withdraw, they suppress. It doesn't mean the emotions aren't there. It means they're afraid if they let it out, it will consume them. I once heard a dismissive avoidant man describe it perfectly. "I feel everything. Love, loss, guilt, but I don't trust those feelings. They feel too big, too dangerous. So I hide them, even from myself." And this is the ultimate secret. Avoidants aren't running from you. They're running from their own emotions. They fear being swallowed by shame, by need, by vulnerability. But here's the paradox. Those same emotions are what make them human, what make them long for connection, what make them come back even after they've pulled away. So when you see an avoidant shut down, don't assume they don't care. Often it's because they care so much they don't know how to handle it. Their distance is not proof of absence. It's proof of overwhelm. Conclusion. So, what have we uncovered today? 5 secrets about avoidance that most people never knew. 1. They're not as independent as they appear. They still long for closeness. 2. Their silence is often louder than their words. 3. They crave love but fear losing themselves in it. 4. They apologize differently, through actions more than words. 5. And they feel more deeply than they dare to show. Now here's the lesson for you. Understanding avoidance isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about seeing the human beneath the defense. It's about recognizing that their walls aren't rejection, but protection. And when you stop chasing, when you hold your boundaries with compassion, you create the one thing they secretly need most, a safe space to come closer. And perhaps the bigger lesson isn't even about them. It's about you. Because the more you understand this dance, the more you learn to honor your own needs. You learn that love isn't about chasing, fixing, or proving. It's about clarity, strength, and the quiet power of knowing your worth. So next time you meet an avoidant, remember this. The distance isn't the full story. The secrets we've uncovered today show that behind every wall, there's a person longing for connection, terrified of losing themselves and waiting, hoping for someone who can see them without judgment. And maybe, just maybe, that someone is you.